Boys and girls, our cleaning ladies, and 4 of the men have gone home. They will be up at 5 a.m. to help with breakfast for us. The plan is to be up and hungry by 6 a.m. Big Henry looked around at the smiles. The community wants you to know we fully appreciate your efforts, and we are amazed at your successes. The fishing today resulted in close to 6,000 salmon fish. Our little team caught the most and we're fishing with poles first. So tomorrow, we eat first. Big Henry laughed as his crew cheered. Now we have something that is a tradition with the fishermen. We take a dip in the river, we put on harnesses and make sure someone has the rope. The men will go first and show you the safe way for your dip. Tony looked around and the last of the families were heading for their cars. Willa had shown him their nest. A plastic tarp on the ground, a beautiful buffalo hides as a cushion, and 2 sleeping bags zipped together. There were also 2 pillows. Tony realized everyone had seen the nest and agreed to it. He reached into his pocket and there were 2 packs of rubbers. Without a word, Billy had slipped a 3-pack into his hand. When he was talking to John Nation, the chief handed him a 3-pack. They were a different kind, so at least they did not come out of the same box. Tony went over to the nest and emptied his pockets of everything. When he went to put his phone under the left pillow, there was Willa's stuff. There was with her phone, another 3-pack of rubbers, again a different kind from the other 2 brands. Tony emptied his pockets and thought, I'm not to get Willa pregnant. It seems to be a consensus in the families on that. Yesterday, I would never have believed we would be sleeping together. She's my queen. I wonder if I could take her to God. Tony heard a small girl's voice say, yes. He heard some screaming as one of the girls and one of the boys were taking their dips. Tony kicked off his shoes and with cut-off jeans and a t-shirt, he moved toward Willa in the river. Willa had also taken off her tennis shoes. She had on a t-shirt and cut-offs like Tony. Tony watched enough to see what the others were doing. When it came time, Tony and Willa held hands as they ran to the edge and jumped in. Tony was on the downstream, and just as his head cleared the water, he had Willa in his arms. He helped the 2 of them out of the river, thankful for the assistance of the ropes and harnesses. Tony removed both harnesses, then grabbed his knees as he just laughed. Willa joined in, and the 2 were in heaven on earth, just being together. There was plenty of heat coming from the smokers and the grill. Everyone found a place to warm up and dry off, and then Tony and Willa crashed in the nest and simply talked for their first time in their young lives. Willa reached over and kissed Tony as he was falling asleep from the day's endeavors. Tony was deep into dreamland. His dream was about flying. He heard Willa scream, then he hit the water. He surfaced and heard another splash. He was swimming against the current but losing position. He could see like a fish and saw Willa coming at him underwater. He grabbed her, then he remembered the big safety rope they had placed there in case someone fell into the river. He raised his arm just in time and was able to snag it. He held onto Willa and asked God for help. Brad jumped in next to him and was also able to catch the rope. Tony, you okay? Brad asked. Willa, she's passed out. Tony cried, I think she's full of water. She's not breathing. Hand her to me and work your way over, then I'll hand her back to you, Brad suggested. Together, the 2 boys made the riverbank, and Tony closed his eyes and started chanting, Take us to God. Take us to God. Take us to God. Tony, you did it. We're there. Brad shared. He had to tap Tony's shoulder to get his attention. Oh, good, Gaia, little sister, where are you? Help! Tony picked up Willa and took her to the Christports. Gaia met them and helped ease Willa down to a recovery position as she started coughing up the water in her lungs. Tony looked to Brad. Thank you for watching my back. Got us both in the drink. You were already flying towards the river when Willa screamed and jumped on the guy's back. She got him good, but he hit her in the face and then tossed her in the river. I jumped on his back and tried to choke him, and he just tossed me off. Big Henry came up and gave him a bear hug, and the guy had his knife out and stabbed Big Henry in the back. I hit him again and he just spun me around and tossed me in the river. There was one more splash and I couldn't tell if it was that guy or Big Henry. I hope to see Big Henry again. Brad shared. Who is that guy? Tony asked. Scott, tennis, Willa whispered as she opened her eyes and coughed several more times. Gaia is Big Henry going to be, okay? Brad asked. Papa John is with him now. He will be okay. Gaia shared. After several minutes, Can we go home? Willa asked. I don't know, I got us here. Gaia, can you help? Tony asked. Okay, have a seat, big brother. Gaia smiled and pointed to the Christports. At the Taylor house, about the time Tony was flying, John sat up and said, "Something's wrong," to Jenny. They heard a knock on the door. Becky and Sally were holding a sobbing Willie, saying over and over, "Tony, Tony, Tony." "Becky, can you watch the kids?" Jenny asked. "Yes." Becky just barely got out of her mouth when they disappeared. Becky thought out loud, "How do they do that?" She heard, "You will learn how." Becky was a 14-year-old teacher's assistant in Everett when Grab the Kids and Run went into effect. Jenny found her at the junior high. She had nowhere to go, and her folks did not make it. Jenny offered her a deal, help run the house, room, and board with a $40 a week allowance, and the family would cover all her expenses while in high school and college. Becky had moved in a few days after the honeymoon. At the fishing hole, John and Jenny found everyone standing around with Big Henry on his knees. He was facing downstream in a daze. "Are you still with us, Henry?" John asked as he kneeled beside the big man. Jenny was behind him, ready to remove the knife. "I broke his neck. Should have done that years ago. That tennis boy was no good. That whole damn line has been nothing but trouble." Big Henry sat back onto his heels. John nodded to Jenny, and she pulled with all her might, and the knife slipped out. John moved his right hand up to cover the wound. That knife was stuck in a rib, and it was just long enough to scratch your heart. "Give me a few minutes." Jenny came over and laid one on Big Henry. "That's for trying to protect my son and future daughter," Jenny said at the look of shock on the faces of both men. After a few minutes, Henry took a deep breath. He started giggling when he saw two young men and a young woman walking up the river path towards them. Willie was down, running as fast as his little legs would carry him. Sally was right behind her little brother when she noticed. "Tony!" she screamed. The small crowd of people mobbed the two healers. Chief Nation and his brother Billy had been alerted by one of the 4 men left to tend the fires. They arrived to hear the "Tony!" When Billy and the chief stood before Big Henry, the big man said, "You always miss all the fun and excitement." Henry loved to needle the bosses. The chief and Billy were his sister's boys. He felt safe and knew he could get away with it. "What happened?" the chief asked. "Scott Tennis is dead. I broke his neck and threw him in the river. Scott stuck me in the back with a little bitty knife. John and Jenny pulled it out and fixed me up. I even got a kiss." Big Henry looked over at a blushing Jenny. The chief and everyone else got the rest of the story from Tony, Brad, and Willa. Things got quiet. Trouble was gone for a time. This little bit of earth was becoming a paradise, but not without a fight or two. People would bring their lawn chairs down to watch the fishing. If they had room in their freezers at home, they would bring their ice boxes. The kids would fill them up, and when a fishing rod became available, one of the older kids would have a blast pulling in big fish. By the end of the week, all 10 stations were bringing in 1,000 fish per day. Big Henry and the kids were getting it done in 4 to 5 hours. The big stainless steel bins used for the orchards were being filled up with a portion of the fish and loaded onto trucks to take to the cannery. Every afternoon, the high school boys and girls showed up and packaged up the smoked salmon and hauled that away to make room for the next day's catch. The report from Chief Nation brought a moment of pause and consideration. They had caught 50,000 fish in 7 days. Big Henry's crew had brought in over 7,000 fish all by itself. "Tony, come join us. Call your dad. Please ask him to also come to join us. We have caught over 50,000 fish this first week. We are trying to figure out what we should do going forward," Chief Nation informed. Tony ran over to the nest and grabbed his phone. By the time he was with Big Henry and the chief, Billy Nation was arriving. "Is that the last net for today?" the chief asked as Tony was hanging up. Tony looked over at Big Henry and laughed as Big Henry rolled his eyes. "We are over 1,000 fish, Chief," Tony shared. Tony took a sip of some water. Willa came up and asked everyone if they needed anything. When they all said they were fine, she asked Tony if he was hungry. "Maybe a bowl of that great chowder." Willa turned and ran off. John Taylor came before Willa got back. "How are you doing, son?" "If I could do this full-time, I would give up banking." Tony shared as he was taking the bowl of chowder. "Thank you, Willa. Everybody laughed. "You want to do this next year?" the chief asked. "Absolutely, if Big Henry is going to be the crew chief," Tony said, then took a big bite of the chowder. "Father John, can I get you anything?" Willa asked. "That chowder looks good." John Taylor watched as Tony ate. "Water too?" Willa asked. "Yes, please," John Taylor said. "I gather this is about the large quantity of fish." John Taylor asked, "Is too many fish a problem?" "We'll be okay for a couple more days, but we need to make the transition from smoking to cannery operation," the chief shared. "We've sold 2 truckloads of salmon in Spokane, as you know, but it wasn't enough. We're scheduled to go twice again this week." "What if we drop down to 9,000 fish per day?" Big Henry asked. "Willa?" John called. When Willa came near, he asked, "The fish in the chowder, has it been smoked?" "Yes, Father John. Beth, one of the ladies at the table, suggested it. It used to be a favorite." Willa smiled. "This chowder, it's great. Let's make chowder out of the smoked fish." John Taylor suggested, "Between smoked fish chowder and buffalo stew, I could eat that all year long." Another industry was formed. The result would be that no one went hungry in the area, and the area affected was far beyond the county line. The varying sizes of cans worked well for both products. The smoke racks stayed up and in use. The cannery got what fish they could use, and when the fish run was over, then both chowder with smoked salmon and buffalo stew was put into production. The first time they showed up in the store, they couldn't keep either product on the shelf. When people had the opportunity, they bought cases of it. Word got around that all the vegetables were locally grown and as healthy as was possible. The schools even found it to be a well-liked favorite for lunches. Tony and Willa enjoyed their time together. The rubbers went unused. They were getting to know each other and liking what they were learning. At noon on Sunday, Brad and Gloria were back from their day off, and John and Jenny picked up Tony and Willa. Billy, Willa's dad, had picked her up a few minutes earlier to pack an overnight bag and brought her back. "Are you a woman yet?" Billy Nation asked his daughter. "No, Dad. Tony asked me if it would be okay for him to ask you for my hand," Willa replied. "I'm still your little girl. He's going to buy me a ring." "I love him, Dad. It's time for you to find a mate." "I'm very proud of you, Willa," Billy Nation stated. "You seem to have a good sense about you." "I'm the great-granddaughter of 2 chiefs. I have a father who loves me more than any child deserves. I trust in God that Tony and I belong together. I thank you, Daddy." Willa laughed. "I'm helping my people eat, and they will eat very well this year. Life is good right now. I have found my mate and lifetime partner." The official understanding was that Willa was staying overnight with Sally. After a long shower and clean clothes, Tony and Willa, along with Willie and the puppy, took a long nap in Tony's bed. Ben was a little put out about not going fishing for a date, but had Stephen over and the 2 boys were busy exploring the homestead. It was promised by Monday that the 2 young boys would be fishing again. The big people of the household looked in and had to laugh. Tony was holding Willa. Willa was holding Willie, and the puppy was tight against Willie. The foundations of his family had been set. John's purpose is about to go into overdrive.